But I walk into a room and there's 20 volunteers sitting in there. They're not getting paid. They're here because they have passion and they love this place. And that's why I love my job.
Welcome to In the Parks, an Indiana State Parks podcast. I'm Allison Martin, and I'm excited to tell the stories of these amazing places in the Hoosier State. I think our parks show off the best of Indiana, but there's more to them than you might expect. So it's time to go in-depth to really know the stories and discover what makes each destination unique and valuable as part of Indiana. On In the Parks, you'll learn about the people, legends, and places that formed Indiana's parks in the past and who is writing this story today. Now that it's officially summer, I'm excited to keep highlighting Indiana's reservoir properties so you can have the best lake life summer ever. And today, we're going to Mississinewa Lake. Mississinewa Lake is one of 3 reservoirs near Peru, Indiana that's part of the Upper Wabash Valley. Like neighboring Salamone and Roush Lakes, Mississinewa was created in the 1960s to prevent Peru from flooding. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers created and still manages the dam on the northwest side of the lake. Most of the lake's activities take place at Miami State Recreation Area on the south side of the lake near the dam, and at Francis Slocum SRA on the other side of the dam on the north side. Other recreation areas surround the lake offering boat access or hunter check-in stations. Also like Salamone, Mississinewa Lake has a deep Native American history, which we'll get into later. But I want to start with the present and let you hear how well loved this park is now before we drain the reservoir and peel back the years to see what the land was like in the past. Let's start with the property manager who fell in love with Mississinewa Lake as an adult.
Yeah, my name is Jordan Epp. I'm the property manager here at Mississinewa Lake. This is my 10th summer working at Mississinewa. I started as the assistant property manager. I've been the property manager for 3.5 years now.
Jordan is a California native who moved to Illinois later and now is a self-proclaimed proud Hoosier. Working for the parks has always been his plan.
Growing up, my grandfather worked for the U.S. Forest Service. His brother-in-law also was a fire chief for the Forest Service. So when I was a little kid, all I heard was stories. Ever since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to be a park ranger.
At one point, a serious car accident interrupted a job opportunity Jordan had with the federal park system, and it seemed that dream kept being delayed.
But anyways, long story short, I've always wanted to be a park ranger, and it's been my dream.
The dream deferred finally happened when Jordan was hired at Mississinewa Lake.
Before my grandpa passed away, I flew home, and he was in the hospital bed, and I walked in to his room in my full Class A uniform. And he looked at me, and that was the first time he saw me in my uniform, and he smiled. He couldn't talk at the time. It was a very special moment. I knew that he was proud. It meant a lot to me.
As property manager, Jordan continues to take pride in the amazing park around him. I asked him what his first impressions of Mississinewa were.
I loved it. This is where I wanted to work. I'm a reservoir guy all the way. I am attracted to, I don't know if you know the difference between preservation and conservation-based minded. I'm a conservation-based minded person, and that's probably because of the influences I had growing up. I've been attracted to Indiana as a whole because in our mission statement it says conservation, and that's very important to me.
Okay, so what does Jordan mean by conservation, and how is that different from preservation? I had him explain those terms a little more and how he sees them applying to parks.
The way I compare it is the National Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service. National Park Service is minimal human interaction. You know, they're there to experience the nature as it is and, you know, don't touch it. Obviously no hunting, limited traffic, you know, trying to reduce everything as much as possible so that it stays natural. And this is just my personal view. I'm not
I'm not asking for a textbook, don't worry. This is not going to be a college curriculum.
Conservation-minded is the resources there to be used, but managed in a way that it can maintain.
So what does that actually look like in Indiana? Jordan gave an example of raccoons. If there's a lot of food at a park, they can overpopulate, end up in closer proximity to each other, and any sickness would spread easily. A preservation mindset might let nature work, well, naturally. Sick raccoons would die off, their food supplies would diminish in the winter, their population would eventually drop, and then rebuild. But it might take a long time. On the other hand, a conservation mindset would provide regular raccoon hunting and trapping in order to maintain population levels and hopefully minimize or tighten that natural cycle. Jordan said parks and reservoirs have different purposes, but both are important and have their role. Reservoir properties especially have a conservation mindset as they utilize hunting, fishing, and trapping, as well as habitat development. Jordan appreciates some of those older activities and sees how reservoirs can provide ways to enjoy them.
I run hunting dogs. I'm a big bird dog guy. And those are things that I've learned from my family out in California. And I have an opportunity to share those things with my children and for future generations here in Indiana.
Helping future generations fall in love with Mississinewa Lake is an all-hands-on-deck mission. It's not just about hunting and fishing, although those are parts of the conservation work the staff does. It's also developing a vibrant, rich habitat that makes the park and lake inviting to wildlife and visitors. One of the staff members involved with that is Aaron Showalter.
And Aaron runs an amazing program. Last year, we recently got a grant for wildflowers. Aaron planted over 60 acres of wildflowers this last winter and the previous winter. And that was through Duke Energy and some other partners like Pheasants Forever.
Let's meet Aaron, who, like Jordan, has a love for nature that runs in the family.
So my name is Aaron Showalter, and I'm the wildlife biologist here. My father was a biologist for the state, and so I kind of followed in those footsteps. Got hired on at Patoka Reservoir in the south, was my first full-time job, and was there for 12 years doing this same job. And then transferred back up here to get back up near my family farm, kind of get where I wanted to be for the rest of my life. So when this job opened, I transferred here, and I've been here for now 13 years. So I went to Purdue for 4 years with a wildlife degree. That's what I've always wanted to do. I didn't have any questions. I didn't wander around my whole life wondering where I would settle. So this has been great. This job has really fit me very well.
Aaron said wildlife biologists often go one of two routes: research-focused or application-focused. He leans toward the latter.
And then you have guys like me that I feel like are more the hands-on. Let's apply that knowledge. Let's take that information and apply it to the field. So I run tractors, bulldozers, and all that kind of stuff. I like taking that information, stuff I've learned over 25 years, and applying it.
Aaron also brings a conservation mindset to his work. If preservation is about protecting nature from use, conservation is about using nature properly. But in both scenarios, the focus is on the land.
One of our original plans on the wildlife team across the state was that we had written down somewhere that our allegiance was to the resource first. That's always stuck with me, that it's my job to work for our natural resources, and then you create that. It's that field of dreams thing. You create that, and then everybody downstream of there is positively affected.
You might find yourself leaning more toward the preservation mindset, but what I love about both perspectives is the consideration of the short and long-term consequences of the work. The staff have to consider each decision for what may happen down the road. It can't just be about the immediate result, which is a great reminder for all of us about our choices. Like at Salamone, Mississinewa is trying to maintain early successional growth in some areas of the park. It's that plant stage between fields and developed forest. They do this to ensure diversity in the wildlife.
So I think people come to these properties and see them as trees. They were always trees. It's forever going to be trees, but they are constantly, every day, evolving into a different set of habitat types. Everything is constantly changing. We as humans don't tend to see it that way. A tree is a tree, but as they grow, everything changes. So following along with that, when it comes to habitat work and being able to understand that you can't see a field as a field, because if you ignore it for 5 years, it's not a field anymore. It's then a brushy stand of trees. So we started with a very, what I would consider an upland game based habitat type, early successional, grasses, shrubs, and they planted trees by the millions on this property to create habitat and cover for animals. And to look back at the evolution of this property now, I would say a specialty of ours is trying to maintain that early successional habitat. I think people have come here for years, and the broad brush says, well, this is a property of trees and vegetation in general. But the evolution of this property was, it didn't always used to be that way. Some of the best wildlife days on the property were 40 years ago, 50 years ago, as we transitioned from the agricultural ground to this more forested type. So now specializing in trying to retain the diversity somewhere in between the row crop field and the mature forest is the key on this property, to maintain that diversity for all species. We don't manage for one species, so you have to have a little bit for everybody.
Thanks to managing their diverse habitats, the park is able to have a wide variety of animals, although it does take effort.
That's a big fight for us. We still have good rabbit numbers, we've got good quail numbers in some places. So trying to hang on to those things that would phase out if you didn't do the active management is the specialty, I think, on these. And Salamoni's kind of the same way.
So you're saying more like if without the management that you guys provide, those trees would grow so much that then the quail and rabbit and other things would not have their natural habitat?
Yes. It's a tough sell when people see you out there with machinery. What they see is removing habitat. What they don't see is then when it starts over as a grassland and turns into a shrubland, and then you reset it back to a grassland, and that maintenance process is important for those animals that need that type, whether it's a migratory bird or a permanent mammal species. They've got to have those different habitat types. If you just focus on the same little acre every year and ignore the other 13,000 or whatever, it's not good for everybody because, again, we don't manage just for one species.
Not only does the staff manage the natural resources, they also watch what nature does on its own. A major flood several years ago is still affecting the plant growth and wildlife habitats. Because of that, if you're a hunter, Aaron says now is the time to visit Mississinewa.
I always encourage people to take advantage of all of the things that we have to offer, whether it be the dozens of species to come and fish for, the game to come and hunt, the things that people care about the most, the deer numbers. People love to hunt deer, and the turkeys, and the big things are really doing well right now. The flood that we had in 2015 was devastating short term to our wildlife and our surrounding forests. But as we talked earlier about resetting succession, Mother Nature has recovered extremely well, and it brought that diversity back from the lake shore up to those unflooded woodlands. You had what they call the feathered edge, where you start with the short stuff, and then you got up higher where the water wasn't in it so long, and some of those trees survived, and you get to the hilltops where all the trees survived. You really created great diversity here. I think the window is going to be sort of narrow here, where our wildlife reproduction capabilities are huge, so our numbers really look good. Our deer harvest is twice what it has been historically. I think because of that massive habitat change that wasn't us, it was keeping the water from flooding everybody downstream. But the after effects in the end have really been a positive for us. I've been talking to people the last few years about coming to enjoy it while they can, because it's going to begin to get away from us again. We don't have the manpower and the money and the machinery to keep it all where it really needs to be. Overall, people need to come and enjoy it while it's at its highest level. I think all of our hunting and fishing is really good right now.
Aaron said there are usually about 12,000 hunters at Mississinewa each year, with a third to a half there for deer. There's also ADA accessible hunting available near the Francis Slocum SRA, at Red Bridge SRA, and near the 1812 site. However, with a focus on bigger game, there are plenty of squirrels and rabbits for those looking for smaller animals. They also have a well-developed dove hunting program. In fact, the habitat restoration Aaron does is what has led Mississinewa Lake to have the highest deer and dove harvest of any state property. And I know I have some listeners who may not be into hunting, but listen again to the short-term and long-term impact created by the program.
We have a great dove hunting program here. Dove hunting on state properties is very tailored to the dove hunter in terms of it's an expensive process to do. Seed, fertilizer, herbicide, all very expensive. But we have built our program here. We have probably doubled or tripled our participants each fall. It's just a couple days of hunting that are a big deal, September 1st and 2nd, that we do controlled hunts. And after that, you can come and hunt on your own. The positive spin-off to that program, while it's expensive for us to do per person or per bird harvested, is that we will go out this spring. We probably planted 2 million seeds we planted. So you'll turn 2 million seeds planted into 200 million sunflower seeds this fall. The doves and the finches and the chipmunks utilize those early, and then as the migration begins, migratory birds stop and pick those up. If you have a bird feeder, you're typically feeding sunflower seeds. So throughout the winter, you're going to feed migratory birds 200 million seeds. While short term, it's great for our dove hunting program, which is again a very niche program. I think the after effects, January, February, and into March, are fantastic for all of our migratory birds to feed them probably their primary food source.
As we heard at another park, hunters are really using this for food, and it helps maintain population levels at the parks so disease doesn't run rampant and trees or plants aren't eaten down to nothing. I thought it was really cool how hundreds and thousands of animals and birds that aren't hunted are benefiting from this work as well. Aaron has also planted more than sunflowers.
Last year we planted 60 acres of pollinator species. We got a grant, so lots of prairie flowers going in the ground. We've got another 30 acres going to go in the ground in the fall of 2026. So we're going to sneak up on 100 acres of prairie flowers. Pollinators are big right now. That's the early successional stuff, that first year growth type thing.
In addition to pollinator work, Aaron is also developing wetlands that provide better bird habitat.
We have focused in the last 6 or 7 years on some of our wetland work.
Yes, Mississinewa Lake is a reservoir, so it may seem like working on the wetlands is unnecessary. But the reservoir levels aren't usually the right height for migrating birds in the spring or fall, and during the summer, there's too much action on the lake to be really inviting for birds. So the wetlands provide ideal habitat for them. Much like I talked about in the Potato Creek episode, there may be times you notice a wetland or pond and there's a lot of green stuff growing on the surface. Is it pond scum? Is it algae? Is it bad or good?
Bostwick Pond, and many of our ponds this time of year are full of bottom growth vegetation, as well as the surface scum, the algae that floats on top. Those are, you can decide whether it's a plus or a minus. If you're fishing in it, it's terrible. For the fish, as an example, Bostwick Pond grows some of the biggest fish that we can grow here. It is great for its great depth, which creates the weeds, which creates the food source, and creates great growth and hiding places for small fish. So we created that pond, or stocked it one time as a perch pond. It instantly back flooded from the main lake. Now it has every kind of fish known to man in it. But our kids' fishing derby is held there every year. They catch lots of fish, and there are some very quality fish in there. When it comes to ponds like that, not just that one, other ponds, you have to strike the balance of being native and natural, which is what it wants to be, and creating the opportunity for people to utilize it in a fishing perspective. So that pond we have gone to twice this year with herbicide application on a small corner of it, trying to leave 80 to 90% native and natural, and we have opened up the rest of it so people can wet a line when they want to and not be snagged up and mad all day.
I felt like I had to double check.
It's actually doing what ponds are supposed to do.
Correct. I think if you see ponds that are clean and naturally clean, not aquashaded or herbicided, those tend to have the heavy clay bottoms that don't grow vegetation very well, and those don't also grow fish as well. So you've got to strike the balance. If it's your own personal pond, are you swimming in it? Are you raising fish in it? You'll have to decide what's the happy medium.
Now, out in the larger lake, you'll find some great fishing. Here's Jordan again.
We get fry from fisheries biologists, and they bring them out, and we raise them, feed them, and then we release them. And last year we released 3,000 to 4,000 walleye into the lake, and they range from 4 to 8 inches, 10 inches long.
Between the river, lake, and ponds, there are so many fishing spots that will keep my fisher people happy for a long time. And that's the beauty of the lake. There's something for everyone. Let's hear from Aaron one more time.
No, if you're going to come to this reservoir, I would just encourage you to check it out. We have great access road-wise. Check it out from end to end because it's one property, but it acts like a dozen different properties in between. When we talk to hunters and fishermen, we tell them, this end of the lake is bigger trees and deeper water, and the other end is more open ground and some ag ground and shallower water. And if you're a duck hunter or a bird watcher or a mushroom picker, every person, I think, likes to be on the property in a different capacity. They like to see different things. They like to view it from a different perspective. So find the place, because it exists here, find the place that suits you. This property is great from its diversity standpoint, literally from a river on one end to the lake on this end. It can kind of offer everything. The trail system on this end are great. We've got roadways that you can walk that are very quiet this time of year. And I love my Merlin app on my phone to listen to birds. So lots of opportunities here to tailor your visit to the things you like.
Speaking of other things people like about Mississinewa, let's talk water, trails, camping, and fireworks. Here's Jordan again. He said the Blue Heron Trail is a beautiful option, but he has another that's his favorite.
Lost Sister Trail over here in Francis Slocum is my favorite trail to hike. You see the water and there's the curvature of the earth.
It was ridiculously hot the day when I visited the park, so I didn't do any trail hiking. But I did take advantage of the bike path through the park. It was awesome. You can park in the beach lot and bike all through the park, including onto the Slocum and Shepacona bike trails. I biked part of them, but was a little pressed for time, so had to turn back early. I didn't get to see it all. But what I saw was beautiful. I was totally immersed in nature, with trees and wildflowers all around me. I saw several deer just in the mile or so I was on the trail. What's also great is the bike path weaves through the campground, which was absolutely fantastic.
Mississinewa is unique in several ways. We have the third largest campground in the state. We have 472 campsites. 400 of those are electric, and then we have over 100 full hookup sites. And some of those are in our seasonal campground, and that's also unique to our facilities.
The seasonal campground is not only unique in the state, it's pretty unique across the country.
It's amazing. We added 4 additional seasonal sites a few years ago, and we have 42 sites. Every year it's a lottery drawing, so everything's randomly picked. If you camped here last year, you're not promised a spot for this year. It's 100% fair to anybody that wants to use this campsite, but you have to rent it for 6 months. So when they do the drawing, this last year we had 120 applicants for 42 sites. It's unique to Mississinewa and it's very popular.
There's a link to the seasonal campground information in the show notes. The lottery application begins next month. The park also has cabins that are very rustic. No running water or bathrooms, but there are both of those outside, along with charging ports for trolling motorboats. The cabins have 2 sets of bunk beds, plus a loft with space for a blow-up mattress. The floors have been redone, and they have electricity with large fans. They overlook Boswick Pond, and I liked the look of them a lot as I biked through the campground. Also really incredible is that Mississinewa Lake is home to the biggest state park beach after Indiana Dunes. It does seem to stretch on for a long time. The Red Bridge Marina is your spot for renting slips, boats, jet skis, canoes, or kayaks. I loved the beachfront area at Miami State Recreation Area. The concession space was nice, the lawn was wide open with plenty of shade trees and picnic spots. There are great views of the water too, and because of the size of the space, it was active without feeling crowded. Jordan and the staff have been doing their best to meet the needs of visitors too, including adding some new features that were very solutions-oriented.
We added some really cool features down at our beach. People going against the rules is they're starting fires on their shoreline everywhere, and they're wanting to drive right up next to the lake. So I go, well, if we're fighting this all the time, telling people to put their fires out and asking them to leave because they're leaving trash with their fire, and they're driving places they shouldn't be, we need to provide something where people can do that. So we put in these really nice ADA access fishing lanes. You drive down here in the cove on the north side of the beach. There's a concrete patio right next to the water with an ADA picnic table, and then we're putting fire rings down there. And it's great, so families can come, and we have an option where people can have fires right next to the water, and everybody in the family could come.
Isn't that great? I think some people might be inclined to keep laying down the law, but instead, at Mississinewa, they're looking for creative solutions to keep people engaging with the area. Mississinewa's biggest event of the year is the fireworks over Mississinewa, and it really is major.
So of course there's the fireworks over Mississinewa. That event is 100% sponsored and paid for through donors. We don't have an entry fee that day. It's all free will donation. And the reason why we continue and build the show is people keep showing up. So we're able to expand, and this has become a really big thing. We had a counter counting how many vehicles over the weekend. We parked 4,000 vehicles, almost 4,000 vehicles in Miami SRA, not including Francis Slocum and Pearson's Mill and Red Bridge, which I know are packed too. And you just do quick math, an average of 4 people per vehicle, you're looking at 16,000, and that's not including our packed full campground, plus all the other SRAs that are packed. We have 30,000 people here.
Yes, 30,000 people came for fireworks. For perspective, That's about the entire population of Miami County, where Mississinewa Lake is located. Insane. And wait till you hear how big the fireworks are. Where do they shoot off the fireworks from?
We shoot them off at a peninsula here next to the beach, and they shoot them off over the water so that it really gives off a really nice show. We shoot off the largest firework in Indiana.
Which is how
It's
big?
A 16-inch shell that we have to bury with a backhoe, the tube. It's huge.
That's awesome. If you want to camp at Mississinewa Lake for the 4th to catch the show, they usually shoot them off a weekend or two before July 4th. You'll want to follow the Friends group to get all the info, and there's a link to their Facebook page in the show notes. With 4,000 cars showing up to watch, you might as well just camp there anyway and make it an epic weekend. How is the park pulling off that big of an event? You guessed it, volunteers.
We have the largest volunteer host program in the state. Last year our volunteer program worked 15,000 hours.
I don't understand the math on this one at all. 15,000 hours divided by 365 days a year is 41 hours. So they have enough volunteers to work more hours than there are in a day? Amazing. That adds up all the hours volunteered by the Friends group and the Camp Host program, which accounted for about 12,000 of them.
And a lot of the Friends group is connected with the hosts. A lot of the hosts are on the Friends board. When people come here, they'll see a facility that is within the campground. 90% of the work is done by volunteers and their care for this facility. So when you have volunteers and people that really care, they're mowing every blade of grass in the campground, cleaning every bathroom, fixing any electrical repairs within the campground. When you have people that really care and really strive to make a good opportunity for families, it's visible. It's visible in the way they interact with our customers. It allows our staff to get projects, really cool projects done, like the ADA access lanes and putting in habitat and additional ponds for nesting. What allows us to do those cool projects is the strength in our volunteer program. And those people have so much love and passion for your facility. And it just blows me away. I have days where I'm exhausted, like I am right now, from after our fireworks. I have days where I go, I'd rather be home, or I would rather, but I walk into a room and there's 20 volunteers sitting in there every day at 8 in the morning. And you look at these people and they're here. They're not getting paid. They're here because they have passion and they love this place. And I think to myself, man, these people here, I'm going to give it my all today because they're here. And that's why I love my job. And I can't say it enough how much I appreciate everything that they do for Mississinewa and Salamone and all of our properties.
Volunteers, we love you. And your love for Mississinewa Lake is visible everywhere. Volunteers and visitors today aren't the first people to love Mississinewa Lake. Let's go back to a time before the reservoir to see who lived here first. And you are in for a story. We're going to hear from Teresa Rohde again, the interpretive naturalist who tells the stories of Mississinewa and Salamone Lakes. At other reservoir properties, we've talked about the towns and homes under the water that are 50 or 60 years old. This time, we're going back even further to just a couple years after the United States of America was formed. And we need to take a quick field trip to Pennsylvania for this one.
So there's some really interesting families. Francis Slocum is probably one of our biggest stories that everybody likes to know about.
We're going back to 1778, during the Revolutionary War. The Slocum family were Quakers who lived in eastern Pennsylvania. In the area, the Battle of Wyoming took place during July of 1778. It was between the American colonists and the British, who recruited local Native Americans to fight alongside them. The Slocums hoped they would remain unaffected by the conflict, but in November, while their father was away, several Native American warriors attacked the farm. The mother and several children managed to escape, but 5-year-old Frances, her brother, and another boy were kidnapped. Her brother was released, and I'm not sure what happened to the other boy, but Frances's life was radically changed. She was raised by Native Americans, adopted by a Delaware couple, and later became known as Machonnequah, or Little Bear. The Delaware eventually settled near Fort Wayne, and Machonnequah grew up as part of the community. She was briefly married, but returned to her parents when her first husband grew violent. She later married a Miami chief named Shepenkana around 1794 and had 4 children. I love the story of how they met. she found him wounded in a forest, brought him home, and helped nurse him back to life. Shep and Kana eventually became deaf, and they moved closer to the Mississinewa River. The area was known as Deaf Man's Village, and it was at Mississinewa Lake.
So did Frances Slocum actually live here, or
Yes,
was she in
here,
just
here.
the vicinity?
Here. It was in the water here somewhere.
So been covered because of the dam.
Yeah. And so her grave was moved from that village up to this site. That cemetery is not part of the property, but it's surrounded on 3 sides by the property.
The best places to view where Deaf Man's Village would have been are from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers overlook, which honestly was so pretty and peaceful I could have sat there looking out over the water for a long time. And you can see it from the Frances Slocum SRA Trail. I was at Mississinewa not too long after a storm, so part of the Frances Slocum Trail was blocked because of a downed tree. I couldn't see the spot from there, but Teresa said the trail mostly winds through nature. However, there's a sign about Frances that gives a vantage point of the past. Kind of.
This whole trail is basically seeing nature. There's not a lot of history other than the fact that this sign looks out over Deaf Man's Village, where she lived.
So I say kind of, because again, it's now covered by water and has been for almost 50 years. So even if the reservoir ran dry, there isn't anything to see anymore. But even though I was just staring at water, I still thought it was powerful, knowing she and her family lived there 200 years ago. That's really amazing. We even have pictures of her cabin still today.
And it shows just like a pioneer cabin with the dog trot in the middle. Nothing that was very different than the average home at that time. That was what they show in the artwork.
Which that's, to me, even interesting because our assumptions of what a Native American's home would look like, that kind of defies them.
So yeah, they didn't stay in wiki-uppies forever. They went to more comfortable homes. We have this picture of this is what...
Right, it's a teepee or it's a wigwam, and it's like, no, it was also a log cabin.
Everybody wants to move into something better, whether we have a big house or a little house.
Yeah, when you get the option to find something more secure and warm,
weatherproof.
you're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
We'll get back to Frances in a moment, but while she was raising children, there were dark days building for the Miami and the area.
One of the darkest part of our property history was the villages that were destroyed in around 1812 and into the War of 1812. Troops moved in. They were trying to force Miami, Lenape, other Indian folks out of this area so that people could colonize the area. They destroyed villages first, and then the next morning, those folks were trying to get their families back, and that was the Battle of Mississinewa, which was one of the early battles in the 1812. That location is close to the edge of Mississinewa property.
The villages destroyed in the Battle of Mississinewa are located in what is now the southeast corner of Mississinewa Lake. Tensions between Native Americans and white settlers continued to grow in the decades following. Native people were concentrated in this area as more land was sold to white settlers. Then, President Andrew Jackson passed the 1830 Indian Removal Act, which forced Native Americans to be moved to reserve land even further west.
Mississinewa Lake is really the heart of the home of the Miami people. The last big reserve was here. As they moved Native people out of the east, this area was the last location where there was a big reserve.
The Miami were already being condensed into smaller reserves of land which the government gave them. Then, that 1830 Indian Removal Act allowed the government to take the land again, the land they already gave them, which was where they had lived in the first place. And it relocated the Miami to areas out west where they'd never even been. The Miami and Peru were likely one of the last to go because they didn't leave this part of Indiana until 1846.
From here, the forced removal occurred right here at Peru. They did, by gunpoint, load these people onto boats at Peru, take them up the canal, and then back down the rivers and take them out west. There were families that received exemptions. Frances Slocum's family was one. There were other Miami people that hid or went to Michigan to avoid going, and then there were a lot of folks that got moved out there and then walked back.
From Kansas City, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look, this is an ugly part of America's history, but I think it's important to acknowledge. Wounds don't heal unless you tend to them. And if you felt tension inside when you heard about the white farm owners in the 1960s who had state buy land from them to put in reservoirs and state parks, I hope you are really feeling that tension right now.
So this is just a location that we try to be realistic about the real story of what occurred as white folks moved into this area and how some of it was sold because they had so much debt. As their lands got smaller, they did less hunting and less self-reliant type things. Like they always wanted to take care of their debts, and so that was why they went to treaty grounds and signed things to pay off those debts. And so that's how the land got whittled away.
I am by no means an expert, and honestly, it's a shortcoming for me that I didn't reach out to any of the local Miami people to hear their perspective. I'm not trying to provide answers, but I hope you'll learn more and educate yourself on all our state's history, the hard parts and the beautiful ones. Here's what I said to Teresa during our interview.
Like it or not, there are generational consequences and legacies from the things that were done hundreds of years ago. And even if we're not responsible for them now, shouldn't maybe carry the guilt of it, doesn't mean we're not going to still be feeling those effects today in our culture and in our state.
Perfect way
to
say it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what happened to Frances and her family? In 1835, when Frances was around 65 years old, she told a visiting trader that she was actually a white woman. She didn't speak English, but she remembered her last name and that her family had been Quakers on the Susquehanna River. Turns out, Frances's siblings were still searching for her. When word came to the family years later, 2 of her brothers and her sister came to Indiana to meet her. They wanted Frances to return to Pennsylvania, but she wanted to stay with her family and her people.
She has lots of family that still live in this area. There's a neat marker that folks could visit here at the property. We also have Frances Slocum Trail, and so it has some of the story of Frances Slocum on it.
Teresa mentioned earlier how some of the Miami received exemptions to stay in Indiana in spite of the Indian Removal Act. Frances and her family were some of those. Remember, Frances didn't speak English at the time of the forced removal, but she had lawyers who represented her and applied for her to stay. Their argument was since Frances was actually white, she couldn't be Native, so she shouldn't have to leave her home. It remains unclear how much of their plan Frances understood or how much they spoke for her. Even if she had spoken English, few women or men of any ethnicity would understand the legal details of the decisions they were making. Ultimately, Frances, her family, and several other Miami families were able to stay in the area where Mississinewa Lake is today. You can even visit the Wabash County Historical Museum to see a shawl she and her family made, along with other intricate ribbon work the Miami were known for.
There are lots of Miami folks all across the state, and definitely in this community right around here. Their traditions and communities and family activities just continue to go on. There's a lot of neat traditional arts that they're working with and that kind of thing.
Frances Slocum's grave was moved to a cemetery not too far from the park. I drove over there because, why not? I had time and I wanted to see the place for myself. It's a nice, special moment in the middle of a bunch of cornfields. It's a place where she and her family can be honored and recognized even today. One place that was important to the Miami is a spot called the 7 Pillars. The 25-foot tall stone pillars are along the Mississinewa River northwest of the dam. Water eroded the limestone, creating what were once small alcoves and are now more like indentations in the stone.
So there's legends about them, about gold back in a cave, but as you'll notice that at this stage of history, there's no real caves there. It's just shallow depressions in the stone that's worn out.
So they've been eroded back over time.
Yeah. I don't know
if they were ever there in the
first place. If they were
place.
ever there in the first place, yeah.
But it'd be fun if they were.
But a very important site to the Miami history. It was like a meeting place, and they say there were some ceremonial things that occurred in those locations, so it was important.
The 7 Pillars are worth a drive if you have the right expectations, the right camera, or the right timing. They're beautiful to see, but you can't get too close because of the river and because most of the land there is owned by the Miami Nation of Indiana. You can't access their property when it's closed, and there are signs reminding you it's private property. So dude, don't be that white person trespassing on native land today. During my summer visit, the trees were fairly thick, so the view wasn't open and expansive, but I could still see the land formations from one spot. In the fall or winter, I think you'd get a much better view. And with a zoom lens or binoculars, you'd really be set.
Seven Pillars is downriver here from the dam. You go on around this corner and you get to the bottom of the hill at the river is the property owned by the Miami Nation of Indiana. And then right in front of you are the pillars, just straight across the river. Their nature preserve is down the road as you curve around towards the west.
If you really want to see them and learn about Miami history and culture, you are in luck. This very weekend, August 23rd and 24th, you can attend Miami Days at the Seven Pillars. The annual event looks really interesting, so there are links to their website in the show notes so you can learn more. From Francis Slocum in the Miami to the hundreds of volunteers and thousands of visitors who come to Mississinewa Lake every year, this land has been deeply loved for a long time. So let's end where we began, hearing from property manager Jordan Epp about his deep affection for this place.
I have family that come visit us all the time, and they get to Mississinewa and they're like, or anywhere in Indiana, they go, I just thought it was this flat pancake,
Flyover state.
That country song, the flyover state, yeah. And they can't believe how beautiful it is. And it is, it's a beautiful state. And that's why I chose to call it home. I drive every day. I go one way and then on my way home I go another way. So every day I drive over the dam and I drive over Red Bridge. And I'm drinking my cup of coffee and I drive over and the sun is coming up. It's just beautiful. You see the water, sometimes it's just like glass. Makes you want to be out there fishing or boating around.
Come discover this beautiful property for yourself. See how the conservation work at Mississinewa Lake has kept it thriving and keeps people coming back so they can spend even more time in the parks. A big thank you again to Teresa Rohde, as well as Aaron Showalter and Jordan Epp from Mississinewa Lake for sharing their time and knowledge with me. In the Parks is not officially associated with Indiana DNR, but I'm so grateful for all the work they do for our parks. Please share this podcast with your friends, and if you could, go leave it a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. You can follow along on Instagram and Facebook at In the Parks Online for more state parks content and my recommendations for the best places to get ice cream or sweet treats near each park. But once again, I visited Peru and didn't get any dessert, so you'll have to find your own favorite spot when you visit. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the parks.